Hello, it's 10 a.m. on Thursday, the 5th of March. You're tuned in to our mid-morning newscast here on ARIRANG TV. Thanks for joining us on this brisk spring day here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broome. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. The U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Mark Lippert, is in a stable condition in hospital after being attacked by a razor-wielding man in central Seoul. President Park Geun-hye touches down in the UAE on the third stop of her four-nation Middle East tour. Prior to her departure from Saudi Arabia, the president calls for greater energy cooperation with Riyadh. Plus, in a further sign of their strained ties, Japan's foreign ministry revises its website to strip down the explanation of the two countries' relationship. And we start with the shocking news that the U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Mark Lippert, has been attacked by a man armed with a razor blade. Lippert was attending an event in central Seoul when the attack took place. For more, we have our correspondent Hwang Sang-hee on the line. Sang-hee, how is the ambassador doing? And please walk us through exactly what happened. Sang-hee? Oh, well, we appear to be having some technical issues with the line there. We will come back to our Hwang Sang-hee in just a moment. First, though, let's look at the rest of the day news, because President Park Geun-hye has arrived in the United Arab Emirates, the third leg of her four-nation Middle East tour. As she has done on the past two stops in the region, the Korean leader will press ahead with efforts to expand and diversify economic cooperation with the UAE. Our Chae Yu-sun, who is travelling with the president, fired this report from Abu Dhabi.
This is President Park's second visit to Abu Dhabi in less than a year. She was here last May to mark an installation of a Korean-made nuclear reactor built under a 2009 bilateral agreement. The reactor at the Barakah nuclear plant site, some 300 kilometers west of Abu Dhabi, is part of a $19 billion contract Korea won to build 4 nuclear plants in the Gulf nation by the year 2020. It's Korea's first ever nuclear reactor export. President Park's previous trip had to be brief because it came only 1 month after the Seoul ferry disaster. This time, she plans to carry out her diplomacy in full force to strengthen Seoul's cooperation with Abu Dhabi in nuclear energy, infrastructure, and healthcare. In an interview with the UAE's official news agency, President Park stressed Korea and the UAE will be able to enjoy shared prosperity if they bolster economic ties in such high value-added areas. In that respect, the Korean president said the Barakah plant project has laid the groundwork for two-way cooperation for the next 100 years. She added the two sides have complementary strengths: Korea in manufacturing, ICT and healthcare, the UAE in energy, finance and capital. President Park then said she hoped to go beyond the economy to bolster security cooperation with the UAE, as peace and stability in the two sides' respective regions, Northeast Asia and the Middle East, are crucial to their prosperity. Chae Yu-sun, ARIRANG News, Abu Dhabi.
Now, I think we have our Hwang Sang-hee back on the line with news about the attack on the U.S. ambassador to South Korea, Mark Lippert. This happened earlier this morning in central Seoul. So, Sang-hee, are you with us? How did this incident go down?
Mark, Ambassador Lippert is said to be in a stable condition for now and is receiving treatment at a hospital in Seoul. Now, the attack happened at around 7:45 a.m. Korea time. That's just over 2 hours ago at the Sejong Center, which is located just across the street from the U.S. Embassy in central Seoul. Lippert was waiting to give a speech at a morning lecture when a man attacked him with a 25-centimeter-long blade. The ambassador was cut on his face and on his arm and was bleeding heavily when he was transferred by a waiting police car to a nearby hospital. Now, we have been hearing from those who were at the site. They report hearing a loud scream as they were waiting for the lecture to begin and say the ambassador's face was covered with blood as he made his way out. Now, the suspect was arrested immediately.
And Sang-hee, what do we know about this suspect? The suspect has been identified. We know that now, but do we know what motivated him to carry out such a senseless attack?
Right, he has been identified as a 55-year-old man named Kim Ki-jong. Witnesses say that after slashing Ambassador Lippert, the man identified himself and said that South and North Korea must be reunified. He also yelled that he opposes war just before he was bustled into a police car. Now, it's known that Kim protested the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington that began this week. We must also note that he is the same man who threw pieces of concrete at the Japanese ambassador to Korea back in 2010.
Yeah, he has a history of these kind of things. And how are the U.S. and South Korean governments responding to this slash attack?
Yes, the U.S. State Department has released a statement. Deputy spokesperson Marie Harf said Washington strongly condemns this act of violence, but gave no further details on the issue. A U.S. official, however, says the injury is fortunately not life-threatening. The ambassador, who is also a close friend of President Obama, has spoken to the president on the phone. President Park Geun-hye, who is currently in the Middle East, has also been reported on the attack. Seoul's foreign ministry says it will release a statement in just about an hour's time. So I will keep you updated as the story develops. This has been Hwang Sang-hee reporting live from the foreign ministry.
Well, thank you, Sang-hee, and we do hope the ambassador goes on to make a very speedy recovery. Now, into one of the clearest examples yet of how far bilateral relations between Korea and Japan have sunk in recent years. The website of Japan's Foreign Affairs Ministry has revised how it describes Korea, and its choice of words have raised some eyebrows. Gwon-swa reports.
An introductory section about the relationship between Korea and Japan on Japan's Foreign Affairs Ministry website used to say that Korea, an important neighbor, shares basic thoughts on freedom, democracy, and economic issues. But the ministry has taken out a chunk of the explanation, and now it just says that Korea is Japan's most important neighbor. Japan's foreign ministry said the change was made to make it similar to recently used expressions. In fact, 2 years ago, when Prime Minister Shinzo Abe talked about Korea-Japan relations, he used wording that was similar to what used to be on the homepage, while what he said during a policy meeting last month was more like the current expression.
Korea is our most important neighboring country.
The Japanese Asahi Shimbun newspaper quoted a government official as saying the revision shows Japan's mistrust towards Korea. While Korea's foreign ministry did not make specific comments on the significance of the change, it told ARIRANG News that it's up to the Japanese government to explain what's behind their revision. There is speculation that the removal of the words may hold some greater meaning, as Abe has recently hinted he will take out references to Japan's war atrocities in a statement he'll make in August, marking Japan's surrender at the end of World War II. Kwon-soa, ARIRANG News.
Now, Korea is calling on Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to reflect upon and show genuine sorrow for his country's past wrongdoings if he makes a planned speech to U.S. Congress during his visit to Washington next month. Speaking to reporters in Washington on Wednesday, Korea's National Assembly Speaker Jung Eui-hwa said true reconciliation between Korea and Japan can only happen when Tokyo offers a sincere acknowledgement and apology for its wartime atrocities. Jung says he delivered his message during meetings with U.S. House Speaker John Boehner and House Foreign Affairs Committee Chairman Ed Royce. Now, during their meeting, the Korean lawmaker and U.S. House Speaker John Boehner have agreed to propose Korea's National Assembly and U.S. Congress adopt a joint resolution marking the 70th anniversary of the end of World War II. An international security analysts centre has warned that North Korea is highly likely to engage in a range of military or cyber provocations to show its disapproval of the ongoing annual joint military exercises between South Korea and the United States. A report by the London-based IHS Jane's Intelligence Weekly says that while both Koreas have a clear interest in avoiding a broader conflict, Pyongyang is likely to carry out more missile launches or cyber attacks on South Korean infrastructure North Korea launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles on Monday. That was the day when Seoul and Washington's annual drills kicked off. Now, one of the joint exercises, dubbed Key Resolve, ends next Friday. The other, with the codename Foal Eagle, runs through April 24th. A controversial bill aimed at rooting out corruption passed a parliamentary hurdle this week, but critics are already raising concerns that the scope of the new law may be unconstitutional. Ji Myung-gil reports.
A sweeping anti-corruption law will go into effect starting as early as September next year, after an 18-month grace period. But critics are already calling for revisions. One concern, they say, is that an individual can be charged under both the anti-corruption law and criminal law.
The criminal statute allows for punishment of those who receive bribes in exchange for favors, and the anti-corruption law allows for the punishment of a person who takes money or gifts in the amount specified regardless of the existence of a favor. That could lead to a double punishment for a single person.
Another stickler is that the law does not have a clause that allows for the punishment of those who give bribes or ask for favors. Public figures who receive bribes worth more than $900 can be jailed for up to 3 years or fined up to 5 times the value of the money or gifts received. The law was originally aimed at rooting out corruption within the government, but was expanded to apply to other individuals with public influence, such as teachers and journalists. What can also be disconcerting, according to critics, is the possible strengthening of the prosecution's power, such as the possibility of abusing its investigative powers, especially where politicians or CEOs are concerned.
Prosecutors will be able to exploit their authority using the anti-corruption law, as it makes it easier for investigations to be conducted with little proof, since the law says a recipient can be punished even in the absence of a favor.
Some lawmakers have also raised concerns that the law is unfair because it does not include civic groups, which are seen as the largest interest groups within society. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
Now we have the second in our 3-part series looking at China's slowing economy and the impact it's having on Korea. And today we focus on Korean exporters and find out what they need to do to counteract the slowing growth of their biggest trading partner. Park Geun-hye has a report.
Korea's exports to China dropped by almost 0.5% last year. A stark contrast from the average annual growth of over 20% from 2000 to 2008 and 14% after the global financial crisis. It used to be global demand that determined Korea's exports to China, as Korean firms largely ship intermediary goods to the country. The situation now, however, is quite different.
A majority of intermediary goods exported to China for assembly are now consumed within China. So Korea's exports to China are more affected by the demand in that country than in other nations like the U.S. or the EU.
A recent report shows that a 1 percentage point drop in Chinese growth equals a 0.17 percentage point cut in Korea's GDP. And with China posting its worst growth in 24 years in 2014, prompting the government to focus on boosting domestic consumption, experts say that old business strategies will no longer work.
The consumer market will continue to expand in China, so in the long term, Korean exporters should look into what kind of consumer goods will meet the needs of the Chinese people.
What's even more unsettling is that Chinese firms are now improving their own supply capacity to replace Korean intermediary goods. Many key Korean industries are concerned that their main export items like display screens, steel, and petrochemical products will get squeezed out of China within the next few years. Such changing landscape has raised the urgency for Korean exporters to produce high-quality finished goods catering to China's changing demand. 황지혜, 아리랑 뉴스.
Now, one of the most important events on the technology calendar, the Mobile World Congress, is taking place this week in Barcelona, Spain. As usual, there are plenty of new gadgets on show, from the super high-tech to the weird and wonderful. The buzzwords this year are wearables, Internet of Things and ultra-fast 5G platforms. Sun Jung-in has more.
Hello, smart bike.
Hello.
Right turn signal on.
A rider controls his motorcycle with just a simple verbal command. He interacts with the bike to check his speed and asks for directions during his ride. This is all possible thanks to Internet of Things technology and a mobile chipset in his helmet.
And using our Intel Edison to add into the bike that communicates to the Intel Edison that's inside the helmet, enabling an Internet of Things and interaction between the bike and the motorcycle rider.
That's just one of the gadgets on display at this year's Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. This air purifier is another. It sends information about the air quality inside a room to a smartphone in real time. This smart purification system integrated with the Internet of Things is able to measure the air quality on its own and turn the air purifier on when necessary. Experts say that in order to make devices like these commercially viable, what's needed is a new generation of mobile telecommunications technology that's faster and can deal with an enormous amount of data.
IoT is real. It is here today. And we need our networks to support this huge growth that is coming.
Korea's 3 domestic mobile carriers are playing a leading role in promoting the IoT market at the event in Barcelona. And they're showcasing their latest 5G platforms with a heavy emphasis on the fact that the network is 1,000 times faster than the existing 4G LTE networks. Son Jung-in, ARIRANG News.
Now, the major military offensive to retake the Iraqi city of Tikrit from IS militants continues. For more on this and other global stories we're following this hour, we connect to Eunice Kim at the news centre. So, Eunice, fighting is now into its 4th day now in what is really the biggest military mission launched in the country since this Islamic State extremist group took the city last summer. What do we know? How's it looking?
Well, Mark, we are hearing that Iraqi soldiers and allied fighters are aiming to encircle the strategic city, as many, if not most, of the civilians inside Tikrit are said to have evacuated. Iraqi army officials say they had surrounded and sealed off Al-Dur, which is south of Tikrit, and another village north of the IS-held city before they tried to enter Tikrit, where IS fighters are suspected to be preparing a fierce fight. Now, U.S.-led coalition air cover remains grounded in this offensive. Iraqi officials had recently declared reportedly that they would pursue this fight with or without American help and on their own timetable. The New York Times reports Iraqi leaders were frustrated with signs that U.S. military leaders were not confident in Iraqi forces being ready for an offensive into IS-held Mosul, the country's second largest city. Meanwhile, there are concerns that the mostly Shia pro-government force heading into a mostly Sunni city could spark more sectarian strife. U.S. Secretary of Defense Ash Carter recently said that Washington will be watching the operation very closely.
And over to Boston now, and it's already been 2 years since the Boston Marathon twin bombing, very fresh in everyone's mind. But the trial of the sole surviving suspect in that tragic incident has finally begun all these weeks and years after. And I understand it began in quite a dramatic fashion.
Right. You'll remember that there were 2 suspects named following that disastrous strike near the finish line now nearly 2 years ago. The older of the 2 Tsarnaev brothers was killed in a later confrontation, and his younger brother now standing trial alone. He faces the death penalty if convicted, and in that dramatic opening statement, Mark, Jahur Tsarnaev's defense lawyer said her client was indeed guilty of the crime he stood trial file for, pointing to the 21-year-old and saying it was him. But she went on to say that the younger Tsarnaev was coerced by his older brother, the late Tamerlan, who she painted as the mastermind of the plot. Now, you'll remember the attack on April 15th in 2013 involved 2 pressure cooker bombs. It killed 3 people and injured more than 260, many of them losing limbs. Mark.
Yes, it was a horrific accident, and like I mentioned before, still remembered very well around the world. Well, thank you, Eunice, and we'll see you back at noon.
See you then.
And a good Thursday morning to you all as we kick things off with the Korean national football team as manager Uli Stilicke returned to Korea on Wednesday after his month-long vacation in Spain. And now that he's back, it's back to work. Now, of course, arriving at the Incheon International Airport, the 61-year-old held a press conference to talk about his plans for the national team. And it seems like his biggest plan is to find more hidden gems in the domestic league, as he stated that there are more players like Lee Jung-hyup that haven't been discovered just yet. Now, going against the style of coaching previous managers have shown in the past, manager Uli Stilicke will not look into experience nor age, but just how well a player performs on the pitch. Now, it's still very early on in the spring, but Kang Jung-ho has been one of the most talked about rookies in the majors, especially after hitting a long home run in his very first spring training game. Now, not only are they doing a great job pronouncing his name, but the experts are praising his swing and power, as they're now seeing why the Pirates have invested the kind of money on Kang Jung-ho. But it's not just the power that they're praising, he's also made some great plays at shortstop, as the former Nexon hero might even turn into a Rookie of the Year candidate. Now, while Kang Jung-ho has been enjoying his 2015 season so far, 2-time Olympic speed skating gold medalist Lee Sang-hwa have struggled and ended her season early. And now she might be opting for surgery. Now, Lee Sang-hwa, who recently ended her season early due to her ongoing issue with her left knee, is now opting to get surgery instead of just going through physical therapy. And Dr. Kim Jin-gu, a renowned doctor in the field of sports medicine, will soon decide whether or not she should get the surgery in hopes to improve her knee. But while getting the surgery will improve her knee, she will be sidelined for an extended period of time as she continues to seek her 3rd gold medal during the 2018 Pyeongchang Winter Games. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great rest of the day and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, it was quite chilly yesterday, and we're having another cold morning. But highs will be a few notches higher than yesterday, and this cold snap will break tomorrow afternoon. And it's 정월대보름 here in Korea today, which is the day of the first full moon of the lunar year. And the moon will rise at 6:09 p.m. this evening here in Seoul. And thanks to the clear skies, we'll get to enjoy that beautiful full moon throughout the night tonight. So on that note, let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The daytime high here in Seoul will climb up to 6, while the top temperatures in Daegu, Gwangju, and Busan will all get up to 8 this afternoon. And as for the other regions, Jeju Island and Daejeon both should see a high of 6, while Dokdo tops out at 2. So after the cold eases up, tomorrow afternoon we'll finally get to enjoy the spring-like temperatures over the weekend, but it seems like another round of cold snap is ahead of us for early next week. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all we have for now. Plenty more stories online, and we'll be back at noon Korea time with our next newscast. We'll have more updates on that attack on the US ambassador here in Seoul. Until then, goodbye.